Astrology Investigates Sean Coombs, also known as Puff Daddy, Puff Diddy, P. Diddy, Diddy, and now nicknamed the Diddler. He is a rapper, a producer, an entrepreneur, and currently under federal investigation with charges for um, sex trafficking, I think labor trafficking, blackmail, drugs, I think racketeering as well, and a whole host of other things. Like you couldn't fit the charges on a cargo ship. There's so many of them right now. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with who Sean Coombs is, Sean Coombs is a very well-known hip hop artist. He was one of the early rappers when gangster rap was really big, and rose to fame and success because he's very talented. And then went on to start his own label and discover other talent, blah, blah, blah. I mean, he's a very, very, well, he's an, what is it, a mogul? That's what they call him. He's a mogul. But what makes this interesting, the reason he is prolific all over the internet, and the only way you could not know about him is if you never look at YouTube, social media, or television, because it's everywhere, is because it's not just Sean Coombs who is on trial right now. It's actually the entire music industry. So there's a lot that's been going on for decades that no one's ever talked about. And now, like everything else that's happened with Saturn and Pisces, the veil is being ripped away and accountability is being demanded. Transparency is at hand. You're going to be held accountable. So it's not just about Sean Coombs, it's literally about the entire music industry itself and its practice and tolerance of things that should not be practiced or tolerated, much like the entertainment industry. They're next. So Sean Coombs, unfortunately, is the stopper plug in the sink that keeps all the water from draining down the drain. Like he is literally the stopper plug that just got pulled and now everything is coming out. So there's a whole lot of people who are very, very worried about what's going on. Not just the people who are in attendance to his air quotes freak off parties. Now here's why he is circulating everywhere with an incredible amount of salacious gossip. So a lot of these charges stem from his private life and his form of entertaining with select celebrities and guests called freak off parties, which are basically, I mean, the equivalent of a modern Roman orgy. And what's interesting about these parties is that on the one hand, where you had literally the equivalent of Roman orgy with the senators and the wealthy, in attendance sort of thing, from Roman times. Inside those parties as well, there was a whole other private party going on, like party inside a party sort of thing. So you would have entire areas or parties going on that involved a lot of closeted homosexual men in, having your own private gay male orgy. And listen, there's nothing wrong with being gay or being a man or being a gay man. I mean, some of the most amazing people I know are gay and they're men. The problem is these people are closeted, so they have a vested interest because it's systemic and internalized homophobia, yada, yada, pick a reason for people not to know, like, that they were gay at all, right? So that makes this a bit of a high point. So it's like, ooh, who was there? Who was there? The other thing with these air quotes freak off parties, right? And if it had been any other thing, it would have been benign, harmless, literally just a big party, a sex party for consenting adults. And there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is that in these parties, because absolute power corrupts absolutely, there is suggestion that one, there was a lot of underage people in attendance, that's going to get you right there. Two, apparently there's a lot of chemically induced sexual assault, meaning, rape drugs and all that sort of stuff that were being used. So people were being forced to do things that they wouldn't have agreed to if they were not under the influence of some serious debilitating chemical influences. Also, there's suggestion that prostitutes were hired and blackmail. That was one of the other charges because apparently he videotaped everybody there. So there's a whole lot of celebrities that did not know that they were being videotaped doing all sorts of stuff that they didn't want people to know about at this giant Roman circus orgy at P. Diddy's place. Um, oh my gosh, it's getting colorful out there. So that's where we're at right now and why we're doing a chart about Sean Coombs. Now, I will warn you as we get into the video, there will be some discussion about race, class, gender, misogyny, internalized and systemic homophobia. So if these topics are sensitive to you, I'll warn you when we get to those parts. I'll try to. Um, but understand that these are important components of the situation that Sean Coombs finds himself in, because not everything can be reduced to the chart, right? So the first thing I want you guys to remember as we get into this is one, and this is the most important thing you're ever going to remember about an astrology chart or people. An astrology chart will not show you a person's character. It will not, it cannot, it does not. So the thing about it is, when we talk about character versus astrology, and character is everything in life. Character are the choices that you make, okay, when you're presented with given situations, good, bad, or indifferent. Your choices and actions in these situations, who you choose to be or become in that moment or as a result of that moment, that is a reflection of your character, and that's choice. Astrology cannot show you that on a chart. People with amazingly super soft, easy silver, what is it, the silver spoon in the mouth kind of charts, where literally life there's is just a big bowl of clover and luck and hand me's and gimmies, and I wish I had those charts, right? And these people like literally skate through life with almost no consequences and everyone doing almost everything for them. They got the lucky hand this time around. There are people with those kinds of charts that are basically awful human beings. Um, there's a Brock Turner, I think his name is. There's a kid who's got all these grand triumphs and got a beautiful freaking chart, born with a silver spoon in his mouth in his life, blah, blah, blah. Even at his sentencing for rape or sexual assault, he got off with the lightest sentence possible. Like, it's ridiculous. But at the end of the day, when you look at his character, he's a horrible human being. He's a monster. Okay? And there are people who have horrendous charts, horrendous. So for those of you who have really bad aspects in your chart, take heart and listen carefully. This is important. There are people in this world who have horrendous charts that literally you're like, how on earth did this person get out of bed and not become a serial killer, right? And they have they have risen up to those challenges and become beacons of humanity that have given so much back to the world and done so much good. Okay? Even though their chart's horrible. Because character is everything, and character is a choice, not an astrology chart. So that's what we're looking at with Sean. There's a lot going on in his chart, but at the end of the day, his character is what's on trial, as well as the music industry that he's part of and represents now. Okay, so let's move on and take a look at who we're dealing with. Alrighty, so this is the chart for Sean Coombs, born November 4th, 1969, in New York, New York. Now, what is important to note is that we do not have a confirmed or recorded birth time for him available to the public. So there's a lot of speculation about what his rising sign might be. But for right now, I've got a rectified chart that I'm playing with, and we're going to get to that in the other part of this video. But for right now, we're going to use just the chart without a birth time because we can still get a lot of information from that. Some background information about Mr. Coombs that is of note. He was born and raised in Harlem, New York City. His father was murdered when he was 3. Apparently at the age of 12, his mother, they say the family, but his mother and whomever moved him to the suburbs of Mount Vernon, New York. And it was there that he attended a prep school. And then went on to university, and then quit university a couple years in, and then went to the music industry, and that's how his, meteoric ascent to fame and fortune in the music industry began. Now, some interesting things about Sean Coombs' background. There is some suggestion that his father was associated with the criminal underground in New York, and that's why he was murdered. He was shot in his car. And his father was apparently believed to have been associated with Frank Lucas, the huge Harlem drug kingpin. There's a really good movie about Frank Lucas if you want to watch it. Fascinating character. And again, issues of race, class, and all sorts of stuff is very important about why Frank Lucas became who he was, right? So Coombs's father is believed to have been associated, but nobody's confirming or denying this, and people in the know are smart enough to know better than to say anything. But that carries a lot of weight. And here's the other thing: his mother claims to have been a model. I was a model too, Anyway, whatever. I'm an Instagram model. Sorry. His mother claims to have at some point in her life been a model. We don't know that. We don't have any confirmation of that. But what we do know is she also says that she was a teacher. Her occupation or profession during the years growing up, Coombs growing up, she was a school teacher. And here's the thing, like right now in 2024, school teachers get paid, like especially public school teachers, like they get paid dirt. They don't get paid very well. And back in Coombs's youth, teachers would not have been paid any better because typically teaching was seen as a woman's profession. And anything as a woman's profession, nursing, secretarial work, and teaching, was never very well paid because you weren't supposed to do those jobs. You're supposed to do those jobs long enough to find a husband, get married, start a family, and then quit. And if you couldn't find a husband, get married, have children, and quit, that meant that there was something wrong with you. So you weren't really very valuable as a human being. So they just refused to raise your wages, no matter how experienced or well you did your job. Oh, yay, the days before women's liberation and feminism. You guys, like some people are out there literally bad mouthing feminism and the women's liberation movement, but you just don't know your history. You've got to know your history. You have to know what it is we came away from and how we got here. So anyway, so here's the thing that I'm going to pose to you. If his father was in fact part of a crew associated with Frank Lucas, who was huge, Jesus, that man was a genius. He was huge, powerful, super powerful. Anyway, Frank Lucas was also very good to his workers, as it were, his crew. If that is the case, it would make sense that somewhere along the line, this move to a very posh neighborhood in New York, out of the city, the tuition for prep school and also the tuition for college, because there's nothing that indicates Sean Coombs went to college on a scholarship. Nothing. And believe me, if he went to school on a scholarship, he'd be bragging about it because we all would. But there's no indication of that. So that was out of pocket payment for tuition for university as well. You're not doing any of that in that neighborhood on a teacher's salary. His mother was not paying for this. There's no way she could have made that kind of money, even if she were an Instagram model. Well, I don't know, maybe. Anyway, so that money was coming from somewhere. So I have some questions about who was funding or footing the bill for Coombs's early life after his father died. And listen, I'm not saying that's a bad thing because clearly he was given the best that money could buy in those situations. I mean, let me go to a posh neighborhood and get the best education possible and then have somebody pay my college tuition. But I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of information missing about his early life that people just don't talk about. We're just not going to talk about that part. So I thought that was interesting, and I just wanted to share that with you. Okay, now let's look at the chart. Okay, so the first thing I want you guys to know, well, obviously he's a Scorpio. He's a sun in Scorpio. He's got Mercury near the sun. Not a great place, but it's near the sun in Scorpio. And he has a moon in Virgo. Now, the thing that's important about this chart, so if you look at this chart, and this is what's highlighted on the chart, is he's got a giant honking T-square, right, that dominates the chart. Come here. Not going to get it. Okay. And the T-square involves a Sun and Mercury conjunction opposing Saturn, all squared by that Mars at 29 Capricorn. That's a pretty potent combination. And now we're going to talk about why. This is the natal chart for Sean Coombs, born November 4th, 1969 in New York, New York. We do not have a confirmed or publicly listed birth time for him, so this is his chart without houses or angles, but simply the planets in their signs. Sean Coombs is a Scorpio with a moon in Virgo. Okay. And this alone tells us a lot about who we're dealing with. So with the sun in Scorpio, we already know that he's a very intense personality. He brings literally all of himself to something or nothing at all. Very all or nothing personalities come under the Scorpio placement. Now, the thing about Scorpio you got to understand is that Scorpio is a fixed water sign. So when they are all or nothing at all, it's after a long, deliberate contemplation about what they're investing themselves into before they actually do anything. Fire signs like Aries can also be very all or nothing at all. Sagittarius, Leo, they bring all of themselves to something. But the difference is fire is typically a much more impulsive, action-driven sign. Water, on the other hand, it's about their feelings, their gut instincts. So, and also slow-moving stuff. So with the Sun in Scorpio, these are very intense characters, but a lot of what they do is driven by deep, long contemplation, as well as their feelings about something. So when they bring all of themselves to it, they bring all of themselves, mind, body, soul, emotions, everything, which is why you don't typically want to mess around with the water signs, especially Scorpios, because when somebody gives you their whole heart and their whole soul in an effort for something and you discard that or take advantage of it, they're not forgiving at all, and they will seek retribution. They're not nearly as easy to let things go as a fire sign, for example. Now, he has the moon in Virgo. Moon in Virgo is a very perfectionist placement, very high standards for self and others, very hypercritical. Moon in Virgos can be very, very tough. They tend to run on the neurotic side, only because they're constantly overthinking and overanalyzing. So with that paranoid Scorpio sun, and listen, let's face it, if you know anybody who's ever known a Scorpio, or you are one, you tend to run just a little on the, I know you call it cautious, the rest of us call it paranoid. Paranoid side, always looking for where the exits and entry points are, for safety, security, all this sort of stuff. And with the moon in Virgo, which is a hyper analytical, overthinking, hyper super critical sign, there's a lot of that. So his brain never shuts off. He's always looking for an angle and also looking for the exits and looking for potential cons and hustles. And did they really mean what they say? But that's not what they said last week. And like this constant over analysis of stuff. So it would appear on the surface that he's very suspicious or mistrustful of people, but the reality is more than suspicion or mistrust, it's that over analytical, constant checking details and kind of seeing what exactly he's dealing with before he commits himself to getting involved in it, that's really happening. A little bit different than suspicious and mistrustful, because you can be suspicious and mistrustful without any brain activity at all, just as a general thing, suspicious and mistrustful because you just don't like the way it looks. That's not overanalyzing. What he does is a lot of overanalyzing, which lends itself to a very suspicious or cautious approach to things. Now, what's interesting about his particular combination, so we just talked about it, right? So he's got the Sun in Scorpio, he has the Mercury in Scorpio there as well, right? Which isn't helping, because Mercury in Scorpio does lend itself to very deep, critical thinking and analyzing and always double checking and second guessing things and people and events, right? It's because Mercury in Scorpio likes to get down deep into the shadows and the details. Now, here's what's interesting. Look at this. So that Sun Mercury conjunction of his, which makes him like absolutely all about knowing your secrets, is opposing Saturn in Taurus, which is retrograde. Now, typically with people who have Saturn in Taurus, across the board universally, all of them have huge, like to the bone issues, concerns about security, material security. Being homeless is like their world's biggest fear. Being homeless, being broke, being poor, not having any resources to work with, right? So people with Saturn and Taurus tend to be a little more, I'm sorry, I can't think of a better description for this, but a little more on the money grubbing side, right? They can't walk past a penny and not pick it up. A lot of this is fear-driven behavior. And the thing about Saturn and Taurus is that when that Saturn and Taurus is mastered and they get past the money grubbing and the constant fear of going broke and whatever, and like hating to spend money and being stingy, when they finally mature past that and they get into a good place, a good healthy place with their fears and they understand what's happening, they also will show themselves and other people how to be incredibly resourceful and very prudent and pragmatic with everything that they have, right? So they're not one for excess or waste, because they don't like to let things go and they don't like to spend money. So Saturn and Taurus is very, very good about building things that last, right? And maintaining things that they do have, because like I said, they're not letting it go. So with Sun in Scorpio, opposing that Saturn in Taurus, everything about his identity and how he perceives the world and how he experiences it has a lot to do with, and listen, we're all making conjecture at this point because we don't know him personally, But with this combination, what you would have is somebody who is experiencing the world and filtering their information about the world through their experiences about shame of lack, right? So there's Saturn shows you the things where you've been hurt, okay, and where you feel shame, whether it's something you should be ashamed of, right, or shame that has been forced upon you by other people, which is often more the case. So there may have been issues in Sean's life about not having enough, not being good enough, not having enough money, being poor as a really, really shameful thing. Not having things that are as nice as they could or should be or would be if he were somebody else. So these are things that really play into his sense of identity and certainly where a lot of his fears are, right? So I would imagine, I don't know, but I would imagine even with his clothes and everything else, no matter how much money he had at any given time in his life, whatever it was, it had to be the best of whatever. It had to be the best of everything. And again, he doesn't like to spend money. So Saturn and Taurus and Sun and Scorpio, they're stingy as all get out. Good God Almighty. So generosity is not, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. Frivolous generosity is not his thing, right? It's all very calculated what he's doing, and every time he spends money or gives things to people, it's an investment. There's more than strings attached. There's a plan attached. So if he's giving you presents and gifts and lavishing you with anything, it's because he's got a plan for you. He's got a plan for you. He's already mapped it out. You just don't know it yet. Okay, so before I get to the other stuff, because he's not a bad person, there's a real interesting stuff here. Well, I mean, he's not a great person either, but astrologically, he's not a bad person. We have to look at this Mars. So Mars is in Capricorn, right? And it is in a T-square with that Sun and Saturn. So right here, this T-square with Sun, Mercury opposing Saturn in a T-square with Mars is dominating the chart. This literally dominates his personality, his psyche, and how he's experiencing life and what he's doing with it at any given time. So when you have hard aspects like this, especially T-squares involving personal planets or in like this particularly dynamic configuration in his chart, it will literally override everything. Everything else becomes a small detail or an accent point or an accessory on a wardrobe, but the wardrobe itself becomes the aspect, right? Which for him is the T-square. Now, interestingly, if you look, Mars is at 29 degrees, 45 minutes Capricorn. It's 5 minutes away from changing signs. It's literally at the end of its sign, which gives it a tremendous amount of power because if we talk about the late degrees, 27, 28, 29, when you get to the final degrees in any sign, 27 to 29 or 30 or 0, because 30 and 0 are the same degree, what you have is this tremendous buildup of energy and this need to push through. Oftentimes people will feel that, right? So if you've got planets at the late degrees, 29 degrees, 27, 28, 29, people can often sense this pushing coming from you, even when you're not. You literally just be standing there and they almost kind of feel like you're trying to push them out of the way. And it's not because you're trying to push them out of the way. It's because your energy with that 29th degree, those late degrees, is so forceful because it wants to move on to the next sign. It wants to make the transition. So that constant urgency to keep going, move, go, transition, go, it's always there. With him in this T-square, that Mars becomes acutely exaggerated, super accentuated. It becomes like a big waving flag at the top of the mountain that you can see for miles around. It is the thing that you need to know about who you're dealing with. So Mars is exalted in the sign of Capricorn, which means that his Mars is particularly strong and he's got the wherewithal and the internal combustion to literally push through any obstacle and get to his goals. Like nothing, he's unstoppable in that way. With Mars at the 29th degree, exalted in Capricorn at the 29th degree, this makes it even more dominant. So interestingly, what this does is accentuates the Mars nature. Now remember, he's already Mars ruled because he's a Scorpio. That Martian energy is very much about domination and power and control because Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. Saturn's about control. Scorpio and Taurus, Sun and Saturn, control and power, domination, domination, domination. So right here tells us that no matter how sweet and fluffy and light and charming, and oh my God, he can be very charming. he's capable of being, at his very core, the essence of who he is somebody who literally is about complete and absolute domination, power, and control. Okay, so that's pretty scary. Used to for good things, you could accomplish great things in this world and certainly be a champion and a hero for a lot of people. Used in bad ways, and you're just terrifying. Okay, what you're capable of doing to suit yourself, as it were. And we're starting to see just how he was using that T-square. So, whew, are you scared yet? So Mars in Capricorn is also a business sign. So it makes sense that he would have gone into business, that he didn't finish college and went on to go into music and go from music and jump into businesses, right? And all sorts of different things. And also Capricorn is a class sign, a classist sign, the sign of elites. Strong Capricorn in a chart with anybody, and what you typically get are people who are status seekers. They need to feel special. They need to feel that they're part of the in group, the up group, the elite group. They want to be part of a special crew that you have to be very special to get in, and you must be invited to get in. This is not for the plebeians. I've never seen this not happen. Capricorns are very much about in-groups and out-groups, and they want to be the in-group. They want to make sure that their little group that they belong to is, one, high status. It's admired and it's respected, okay? And it's not open to the public. You need an invitation to get in, and you have to be exceptional in some way. Sean Coombs was very much about moving upward in the ranks no matter what group he was in with, right? So if you look at his businesses and stuff with fashion sort of stuff, like he absolutely didn't stop at just making enough money to make a lot of money. Everything was about driving himself to the pinnacle of status and success so that he could have invitations to very elite status groups in society, which apparently is where he ended up. Now, I don't know the details of that because I don't really follow him that closely. Maybe you do. Certainly share. But looking at the people he was in, the high society, high society that he was interacting with up until his arrest, it's pretty obvious. Like he really worked his way up and had a goal and an agenda in mind that had everything to do with being part of that group, darling. You know, not just the Hollywood elite, but up there, way up there. Now, so far, we're not seeing a real great picture. This is all kind of scary. This is all kind of scary. So let's look at the other things in his chart and see what else is going on. Well, my friends, here's something juicy, 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 right? Get rid of that. Right here, he has a Venus-Jupiter conjunction in Libra. And let me tell you about a Venus-Jupiter conjunction in Libra with a moon in Scorpio, or moon in Virgo and a sun in Scorpio. The moon, Venus-Jupiter conjunction in Libra makes you so charming. You could sell ice cubes to Eskimos. You could literally sell life insurance plans to the dead. Venus and Jupiter is in Libra is a fantastic place to have it. You're well-mannered, you're polite, you are smooth, honey, so smooth and elegant and charismatic and charming and yummy, oh so yummy. And here's the best part, with Venus-Jupiter conjunction in Libra, typically what you get is really beautiful skin, really clear, beautiful, unmarred skin, and usually makes you very, very pretty. And he is, if nothing else, a very pretty man. It's really, literally, it's very hard to find a bad picture of him anywhere. So he's also photogenic. So with Venus and Jupiter in Libra, we tend to be very good to our partners, and our partners are very good to us, okay? Because Venus is the sign of partnership, or the planet of partnership. With a Venus-Jupiter conjunction, we tend to be very generous towards our partners. But remember, this guy, right? He's not a generous person. He's as stingy and tight with his money as all get out. So when he's generous with his partner, after he's given long and hard consideration about what he's getting involved in, it's because he's got a plan for you, right? And he's expecting a return on that investment. Whew. So the good news is with this particular combination, you know, if he decides that you're worth investing in, he will spoil you run. He will spoil you run. You know, the bad side is that if he's spoiling you run, he's got a plan for you. that you are not necessarily privy to, right? So you are an instrument as part of something much grander. So because he doesn't just muck around the muck around. No, 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 no. It's not enough that he has arm candy. No, he has to have arm candy that serves a function. So there's that. But it's still a beautiful placement to have because people are good to you, and I'm sure men, women, rich old people, rich old women just love them some Sean because he's so cute, so pretty, right? You can tell. You can tell. So there's that, which is always nice. And again, he's very polite, very soft-spoken. Venus, Jupiter, and Libra with that moon in Virgo is going to make him super, super polite and very, very refined. This is like the James Bond sort of presentation, right? Very refined, very smooth, very attractive, very understated, very impeccably dressed, sort of thing, all the way down to the details. It's all about the details. That little tiny speck on the lapel's got to go. That's that Venus, Jupiter, Moon, Virgo thing. So I'm sure men, women, rich, old women, I'm sure they all love them. Okay, so sorry, I'm having a little fun here. Okay, now here's what's interesting, right? So that Moon in Virgo is making a trine to that Saturn and Taurus. Now, what this does is this softens that stingy nature of his, okay? So the moon in Virgo, again, is very persnickety, has hypercritical, very super high standards for the type of people that they'll get involved with. Like, if you ever wanted to know what's wrong with the way you're dressed, don't ask somebody with the moon in Virgo because they will tell you down to the last tiniest detail. They'll have a list, like Santa Claus's toy list, of things that you should probably change, get rid of, fix, wear differently, whatever. Oh my God, Venus in Virgo, or I'm sorry, Moon in Virgo. Whee! But the Moon in Virgo, trining that Saturn in Taurus, softens that Saturn in Taurus a little bit, makes him a little less tight-fisted with his money, a little less tight-fisted with his emotions, and also, more importantly, makes him incredibly loyal. Incredibly loyal. Because, and I say that because this combination here, right, this T squared, he's loyal to no one but himself. This man is all about what's good for him, right? Family comes second, partner's third, right? Because if he chose you as a partner to have kids with, you're literally part of a plan. You're an instrument, not necessarily anything of any greater value. Children, on the other hand, are an extension of yourself. So him first, children second, partner's third. But what helps is this trine between the moon and Saturn, okay, because that also sets up a sextile to that sun, right? Makes him extremely loyal. When he does have an actual emotional relationship with you. So he is a rock and he will be there through thick, thin, no matter how bad things go. You know the old joke, oh my gosh, what is it? I will be your best friend, and if you ever need a place to hide the body, like I'll bring the shovels kind of thing. Or sorry, it's pretty macabre, but like he will literally be there no matter how bad it gets, no matter how awful things are. If you're what he considers someone that he genuinely emotionally cares about, he will be your rock through thick and thin, no matter what you've done. Unless you hurt one of his kids or him. But, who would be that stupid? And he would know you would do that long before you got there. Okay, now his north node is in Pisces. Now I want to talk about the nodes I want to talk about the nodes real quick because they're important. So put that in there. All right, so the South Node, in theory, if you believe in reincarnation and past lives, your South Node is where you've come from. It's the things that you're familiar with, things that you've done before. It's the places we keep trying to go back to because it's easy. It's familiar territory. Been there, done that. The North Node is the great unknown. So it's the things we're supposed to master and learn in this lifetime in order for us to evolve and get off the karmic wheel and move on to the next lesson and not have to keep repeating the same awful lessons over and over and over again with bigger and bigger penalties each time. The problem is the South Node's an easy draw. It loves pulling us back. Oh my gosh, it loves pulling us back. So he has the North Node in Pisces, the South Node's in Virgo. Now he's got a lot of this mercurial, hyper discriminating, hyper critical thing anyway. And South Node in Virgo typically is coming from a previous lifetime that was extremely critical, extremely analytical, extremely logical. It was all about, what I see, not what I feel. It was all about the, rules, logic, right? Very robotic almost. Um, and also too with the South Node and Virgo, sometimes you get people who come from previous lifetimes where they've experienced trauma as part of medicine or sickness or disease. So they've had issues. If you believe in reincarnation, they have had issues with medicine and wellness, right? And being okay and hygiene. Maybe they, in previous lifetime, they survived a plague or something like that. So in this lifetime, the South Node in Virgo, you get people who can be a little bit of a hypochondriac sometimes, germaphobes, or very, very fastidious neat freaks, right? Absolute neat freaks. Can't, like a little speck of dust anyway, they go ballistic on you, okay? Because it's a kind of a neurotic thing. But the North Node is always where we want to go to. His North Node is in Pisces. And here's what's interesting about this, right? So the North Node Pisces, forget all the bad stuff here from some astrologers about how awful Neptune and Pisces are, drug addicts, crazy people. The North Node in Pisces is very much about getting into your feelings, which we know just from looking at his chart already, he's not real comfortable doing. That's not where he's happy. He doesn't like having feelings, and when he does have feelings, he likes to dissect them because it all has to make sense, right? He has to analyze it. But the South Node in Pisces, or North Node in Pisces, is very much about getting in your feelings. And it's also about being a compassionate humanitarian. It's about seeing the thing that connects everyone around you. It's about not victimizing people. Instead, it's about championing victims and people who can't champion themselves. Clearly, from what we're seeing in these federal indictments that are coming down and all the juicy gossip that's coming out about what he's been doing in his personal life for the last 2 or 3 decades, being a humanitarian and championing the weak and not taking advantage of the vulnerable, and exploiting the weak and all sorts of stuff has clearly not been something he's wanted or willing to do. And instead, he's been doing a South Node in Virgo, which is logic, facts, facts, facts. It's got to make sense. These are the rules. Beep your feelings, right? So I would say on that level right now, he has failed at that lesson, but he's not dead yet. So there is still time. There is still time. But he's a tough nut to crack because of this giant honking T-square he's got to work through. This giant honking T-square. So, even a small amount of mercy and compassion would have done him good in this lifetime. But clearly, he totally missed that lesson. So. Now, what we're left with here are the outer planets, Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune, and we're not going to get too much into them because they're not actually doing a whole lot, unless they're on an angle, they're not really doing a whole lot here that's noteworthy in his chart. The big thing that we're looking at with him is this T-square. That is the thing that literally, the key that unlocks lock and dominates the entire chart and his existence on this planet. And it's not a fun or easy T-square. Mean, I tell you, mean. Oh, right, that was the other thing too. So with the Sun in Scorpio and Saturn in Taurus like this, with Mars exalted at a critical degree at 29 Capricorn, which is Saturn ruled also, he has propensity to be extremely cruel. So we know about the physical abuse with women in his life, and the allegations of sexual assault of underage people and all that ickiness, right? So we know he's capable of some really crappy behavior, but the level of cruelty that this man is capable of going to is much worse than that. So I don't know that he's ever sunk that low in his character, but all the dirt's not out yet, so who knows what we're going to find out. But don't be surprised if this elevator goes down a few floors even further. So we're going to take a quick look at some of the things in his chart. So let's start with Mars, which absolutely controls the entire chart here. Mars at 29 degrees, 45 minutes Capricorn. If there's a thing called dignities and debilities, right, which basically is the strength of the planets. We know that Mars at 29 Capricorn is going to be here. So Mars is in its exaltation. Here we go. Mars is in its exaltation in Capricorn. And at 29 degrees, it is in the term of Saturn. And it is absolutely in the face of Mars. So what this does is this emphasizes the Mars-Saturn energy or qualities of Mars in a Saturn sign or Capricorn. Well, so that's not great. This is great for soldiers and generals. If you ever needed somebody to go to battle or war, to plan a campaign to take out an enemy, that's great. But for, the softer parts of living, like, being able to enjoy yourself and feel safe around somebody, that's not necessarily such a great thing. Unless, of course, you're one of these people that really gets off on having, cruel taskmasters to run your life. Yes, master. Yes, master. I mean, listen, if that's your thing, whatever. Then he's like the perfect guy, right? Also in the table of dignities and debilities, let's take a look at this. So Saturn is at 457 Taurus. Okay. So Saturn is in the term of Venus and the face of Mercury. And that's all we got going on here. So Saturn with Mercury and Venus shows up again. Venus is very much about money and our ability to experience pleasure and to share with other people. And Mercury is a business planet. It's all about thinking and planning and sort of stuff. So even, I hate to say it, but the Saturn in Taurus with the term and face degrees that it's sitting in, and Saturn is weak in Taurus. It's peregrine. It doesn't know what it's doing here. It does not like being in Taurus. What this does is that this gives a much more emphasized focus on the business side of Venus things. So beauty, luxury, pleasure, all of these things have a price, and the price of these things is more important to him than the actual beauty, pleasure thing, whatever, right? If we look at the sun at 11 Scorpio, right? So the thing about this that's interesting about Scorpio is it's Mars cross chart. So Mars strong and dominant, which we already have as an issue in his chart. So you've got even more of this domineering kind of thing. Man, I tell you what, for all you squeaky, squirmy submissives out there looking for like your big alpha dominant man, this is the textbook definition of how to find one. I personally like my men a little bit more yielding, reasonable, sane. But some people like that. Some people like mean people. Sorry. All right. Yes. So no, not that one. Come back here. So the sun is in the term of Jupiter, and it is also in the term of the sun. So the sun in the term of Jupiter and the sun, that particular combination is going to give you somebody who's actually a fun guy. So when he parties hard, and he's very fun to hang out with and be social with, which is kind of a paradox, right? Because here we've literally been talking about somebody who is the male version of Cruella de Vil based on his chart, who at the same time, is also very charming, but only because he's got a plan for you, right? So it's kind of laying out a trap, right? Putting the little sweets and breadcrumbs to lure them in, and then springs the trap. So, I mean, this is a very calculating person, and they don't really have free-flowing emotional relationships. They don't really connect with people or want to connect with people on a deep emotional level. They don't, it makes no sense to them because that's South Node and Virgo, right? They don't want to do the wet, sloppy emotions, F your feelings. F your feelings, I got things to do. And yet here we've got a picture of somebody who is otherwise generally seen as a very fun-loving, funny, and funny is the other thing too. He should actually be a laugh riot in company. Very fun-loving, funny, charming guy, right? Just a lot of fun to be around. You'd never know all this was lurking beneath the surface, but it's there. It's totally there. Now, when you're looking at dignities and debilities, this gives you added layers of information, but this should not be your go-to in terms of trying to read a chart. The whole chart you've got to take in consideration together. And remember, this whole thing, all of this, before you get into any of this, is what's going to tell you the story about what and who you're dealing with. If you have not mastered or made complete sense of what you're seeing right here, then none of this is going to give you any extra information, and in some ways may actually confuse you, because it's kind of like salt in a dish, right? A little bit of salt goes a long way, but you've got to understand the dish to understand how much salt to put in. And if you focus too much on the salt and all the spices, you lose the dish, and then you don't have anything palatable left to work with. So just thought I'd share that with you. So I thought that was interesting. what's also very interesting, now remember we talked about that Jupiter-Venus conjunction um, in Libra that makes him so, so charming and so smooth, right? So here's the Venus-Jupiter conjunction here, and it is conjunct these fixed stars. Now, these particular fixed stars are very good at supporting the ability to accumulate or acquire wealth and good luck and good fortune and prosperity in this lifetime. Do not panic if you don't have these fixed stars in your charts. There's plenty of fixed stars elsewhere, and also there are plenty of people who do good things and acquire big things and do good stuff and enjoy their lives and benefit from it that do not have fixed stars like this showing up in their chart. And if you do have these fixed stars showing up on your chart, it's not a guarantee that you're going to land in the lap of luxury. Everything, it's literally like making a cake. It's all the ingredients that go into the end product. So if you don't have fixed stars that indicate wealth and luxury and all sort of stuff, do not panic. That does not mean you are destined to be poor and begging on the street for the rest of your life. I promise. If you do have these fixed stars in your chart somewhere, also understand that these do not guarantee that you will accidentally fall into a big bag of money and be, suddenly wealthy all of a sudden. It will absolutely boost and increase your chances of success, and it will certainly bring you much what it promises at whatever level the rest of the chart supports you acquiring. Okay, so there you go. But if you want to look up these three fixed stars, Foreman, Spike, and Arcturus, because they are conjunct that beautiful, lucky Venus-Jupiter conjunction in Libra he has. So right there, we know at some point he was going to get a lot of support and benefit from people around them, from partnerships, and have material comfort in life. And boy, howdy did he. Now, what's also interesting about this, and this is an excellent talk about fixed stars, right? Alphecca is an interesting fixed star. So his sun is on these two fixed stars, Akru, or the cross, which is a fixed star sacrifice, and Alphecca. And what's interesting about Alphecca, if you look it up, Alphecca, one of the things that they say about Alphecca, and remember these interpretations were written in the Middle Ages, something to the effect of beds, boys, and girls, suggesting or signaling bisexuality and or pedophilia or hebephilia. We're not completely sure what the writers meant because it was written in medieval English and they, didn't get too deep into that sort of stuff in what they were documenting in their writing. But I thought that was interesting. Now, here's what I want you guys to understand. The Alphecca, this beds, boys, and girls, as an indication of possible bisexuality or chasing literal boys and girls, is this. If you see this in a chart, this does not mean that that person is absolutely any of those things. You can have Alphecca in your chart conjunct something and you are not bisexual. You do not bed boys or girls or underage people. That has nothing to do with it. But what it does do is if you're going to be famous for something, this raises the possibility that your unconventional sexual activities may be the thing you become famous for. So if you have Alphecca in your chart and you don't have an unconventional sex life, I'm sure you'll be fine. If you have Alphecca in your chart and you do have a unconventional taste, put it that way, this could be challenging because this may be something you end up being famous for, as is the case with Mr. Coombs, who clearly now more than anything else is now famous for his unconventional. I'll be kind because he hasn't been proven guilty yet, but unconventional sexual tastes. Abireo and Altair are also conjunct Mars. Now remember, Mars is extremely dominating across the entire chart for him. So this takes special significance. Abireo and Altair have to do with ambition, blind ambition, but also downfall, right? So they're in and of themselves, they can be challenging. So I would look at it, if you're really interested, you look it up, but this is the one that really drives it home. That one and Alphecca. So I thought I'd share that with you. So fixed stars are nice. They're an added spice. They give a little extra detail. They are not a guarantee or promise of anything. So those, and I'll give you an example for all those Trump believers out there from 2016. Oh my God, he's 29, Leo rising. The hair. Regalist, fixed star regalist. Oh yeah, Jesus, these people. Okay, so here's the thing. Regulus rising, as opposed to Regulus on the midhaven, is a fixed star that suggests an elevation in status or power, right? Significant elevations and or honors, achievements, and awards. So you would think that becoming president of the United States is a significant leap in terms of status. And, it is a leap in status, but the presidency for many decades now has been the Billionaire Boys Club, right? So you already had to be at a certain economic level to begin with, and a certain social status level to begin with, to even enter that foray. And I'll put a link in the description block below, and I want you to look up a man, Mr. Ross Perot, little man with a big hat from Texas, a whole lot of money, ran for president one year. He's a character. But Ross Perot is like a classic example of the Billionaire Boys Club that you have to kind of be at that level with before you can even throw your hat in the ring for presidency. So it's not actually that big a jump, because Donald was already up in that echelon of money in society. It's not like he's Sean Coombs, who grew up, with a single mom, and coming from, father connected to the criminal underworld in New York, blah, 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 and rose up the ranks like he did. Trump, already had a leg up, 2 legs up, a leg up, 2 legs up, a step ladder, and a bunch of helping hands push his big diaper behind up to the upper levels, right? Very little had to do on his own. And by the way, don't forget, everything Donald had as far as success occurred after he married Ivana, because Ivana was the one who introduced him to the Russian mob, helped him make those connections because she speaks fluent Russian, she spoke fluent Russian. And is the one with the business sense. Donald is an idiot. Ivana is the one who helped him get where he needed to be, and probably the one who convinced his father to keep bailing him out. I'm just saying, because after Ivana left, everything went to crap again. Okay. So, fixed stars don't guarantee anything. Okay, they just give a description and highlight certain things. So for those of you who have Regulus rising, by the way, at some point in your life, you will receive achievements or awards for meritorious work, right? Because the Regulus, it means literally Cœur de Lion, the heart of the lion. So it's about magnanimousness and doing good things for the greater good and being recognized for it. So I just thought I'd share that if you guys are interested in fixed stars. Now, again, we're going to take the chart apart a little bit more and do a little bit of deeper dive, see what else we can find out, right? And here is some things. So there's a thing called a parallel. A parallel is when you have 2 planets, right, like this Moon and Saturn here, that are at the same declination above or below the horizon. So parallels are used in a couple different ways, but basically when you have a parallel, it operates or expresses itself similarly to like a conjunction in a chart. So the Moon and Saturn in his natal chart are not conjunct. We know they're trine, right? So his Moon is in Virgo, it's trining his Saturn in Taurus. They're in a trine, but that's not a conjunction, because a conjunction means you're operating in lockstep formation, right? Whither thou goest, I shall go too. But the declination gives that Moon-Saturn trine even more of a fusion between those 2 planets. So the Moon and Saturn together really operate like a Moon-Saturn conjunction to the nth degree. With a Moon-Saturn conjunction, or in this particular case, Moon-Saturn parallel as part of that Moon-Saturn trine, this double emphasis of Moon-Saturn as a unit, as a single fused unit, is not happy. This is somebody who does not like women. This is somebody who does not trust people. This is somebody who does not like emotions, that does not do anything based on, emotional, romantic women. This man is about as romantic as a calculator. It's challenging. It's very challenging, because that Moon Saturn is cynical. They're cynical, they're guarded, they're closed off. It's literally like hugging an iceberg, like, and knocking on a door to an empty room. There's no one in there. And this would make it very, very challenging. Now, the upside to a Moon-Saturn parallel is it also makes this person extremely disciplined, right? So they have absolutely no problem doing what needs to get done with no emotional conflict whatsoever. Just got to get done. So if you need a pig slaughtered or a chicken's neck broken for dinner, or any kind of like gory, gross thing that would make other people feel, that's the operative word here, feel really, really bad, you want somebody with a strong Moon-Saturn connection, because they're practical, pragmatic, matter of fact, they'll just get it done. No feelings involved. Unfortunately, with everything else, when it comes to actual relationships, that Moon-Saturn conjunction, Moon-Saturn parallel, can be really difficult. Now, with him, got to remember, because this all works together, right? With him, this Moon-Saturn parallel is part of a bigger problem, which is Look at this. Remember that T-square? Power, domination, and control. So we already know that he's got psychological issues. Let me get rid of this for a second, right? Because of this T-square. He's got some huge psychological issues that just make him impossible and potentially unsafe to be around, no matter who you are. No matter who you are, okay? Because the brain never shuts off. It's not to say that he's batshit crazy. It's just that his paranoid brain is constantly calculating, and he doesn't operate from a place of feeling. Okay, so even shows of emotion, right? It's calculated. It's a performance. There's nothing, I mean, if you knock on the door and open it up, there's nothing inside but an empty room because his North Node is in Pisces. He's supposed to learn how to be in his feelings, which he doesn't want to do because everything else in his chart says, no, thou shalt not pass. We are not going there. Just knock it off, buddy. Dry your tears. We got stuff to do. So that, and now, dear God, we've got this Moon-Saturn parallel on top of it, right? Further reinforcing all the things we really don't want to see in somebody you're trying to have a relationship with. Oh, he's a fun guy. He's a fun guy. It's like a sociopath or a psychopath. They're super fun, super charming, la, 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 life of the party. They can make you feel like $1 million. They can be really, really good to you. And then they can, you know, throw you down a well, put lotion in a basket and drop it down to you. Say, lotion up because I want your skin. Because they're about to skin you. I'm not saying he's a sociopath, but I'm saying that complete divorce from feelings, that complete amputation from actual genuine feelings versus what he presents to you is very real and very operative. So if he has feelings, they're limited. He's got very limited emotional vocabulary here. And even then he doesn't like what manages to sneak out every now and then. Yikes. Okay. Now, so when you're looking at your chart, one of the other things you can do if you get the thing, right, you get this aspect list. Okay. These are all midpoints. We're not going to use those. So just ignore that. So there's applying and separating aspects. When you have aspects that are coming together, that's what the little A's are here, right? When your planets are coming together, they're increasing in force and energy. And as a result, presence. When you have planets that are separating, because you see a little S, right? It means that they're moving away. So the energy and power and impetus of that particular aspect combination is weakening. Some things we want a little weaker, some things we'd like to see a little stronger, some things we just need to know, like this is operating a lot more force than usual, right? And also too depends on how close or far apart those aspects are. So I took a look at what planets he has that are applying to each other that are very close, right? And what I'm finding is a pattern. Okay, so the Mercury, Mars, and Saturn, Mars, and Saturn are all involved in applying aspects, and certainly with each other and other planets. But these are dominant planetary energies through his chart: Mercury, Mars, and Saturn. Where does that sound familiar? Well, maybe the Mercury here, the Mars here, and the Saturn here. Remember, I told you this T-square dominates the chart and everything that man is about. So look for the energy or the function of Mercury, Mars, and Saturn as a combination to tell you and help you understand who you're dealing with. And don't forget, he's got Moon, Saturn parallel to each other. He's cold. He's just an emotionally cold man. He's not emotionally dead, I don't think, but certainly emotionally cold. And we're going to end this video here. There will be a part 2 for those of you who are interested in looking at his chart even more deeply, because I tried to rectify the chart, and this is the ascendant that I came up with. Now, this is a work in progress. I could be wrong. We're all making conjecture and educated guesses at this point. But if you're interested in actually taking a deeper dive look at his chart, we can look at that. It will be in the other video. So with that, my friends, let's see what happens with him. And see how this plays out. This is going to get interesting. This is going to get interesting. And again, it's not just him that's on trial. It's the whole entertainment industry, but specifically the music industry. Oh, and that was the other thing I wanted to bring you back to before I close this video. So remember, just talk about the case. So here's a couple of things that are happening. One, we know as of today, which is the 22nd. Hang on, I got it. 24th of September. There are reports that he is doing everything he possibly can to stay out of prison. They won't give him bail. They won't let him go home. No, you're going to jail, son. Until trial, you're going to jail. And he is losing his ever-loving mind. And the last report I just read, he's apparently not eating. Now he's on a hunger strike of sorts because he really does not want to be there. So here's the thing, right? Like if you're P. Diddy or Sean Coombs, like, and you have all sorts of connections above ground and underground, you know, high life and low life. I can't, and you're a very successful and very popular gangster rapper, right? Among other things. Like and you like boys. I mean, let's face it, he likes boys and he likes a little, you know, rough, you know, non-consensual interaction with people of the intimate variety. I can't imagine why he would be worried about going to jail because that would be paradise for him. Everything he loves, bad boys, rough sex. People who love his music see him as an icon, you know, and applaud him as a celebrity, and all sorts of stuff, right? So, and also a lot of them hate women too. Imagine that. So, why would you be so worried about going to jail? Well, think back to my question about where the money came from that supported him through his early childhood and up into college. Where did this money come from? His father was believed to be, and nobody talks about it, an associate of Frank Lucas, which is a huge drug kingpin in Harlem back in the day. Mother on a teacher salary, a black single mother on a teacher salary moves to a suburb in New York and puts her son in prep school and then college. And who's paying for this? Not on a teacher salary or not. So somebody was funding all of this because we're talking some serious ticket items here. So if that's the case, and you know, Sean's a hustler, and you see it in his chart, like he's, you know, he should have been doing his North Node in Pisces, doing South Node in Virgo, and it's all about, you know, being the best, the biggest, the highest, right? The top levels of things. So it's not unthinkable that Sean would have had connections to the underworld growing up, maintain those connections to the underworld growing up. I don't know how you would get away from them, especially if they might have been funding your education and lifestyle and your mom outside of Harlem. Um, so I would imagine he's got connections, and you know, perhaps the reason he is so absolutely abjectly terrified of going to prison and being there right now is not because he will be popular and well received and it's full of all of his favorite activities, but because he knows he's literally in big trouble. And the whole reason it's blew wide open is because he pissed somebody off or he owed somebody some money. And it wouldn't be somebody in the entertainment world because they've all got their own stuff to hide and cover. They're not trying to get themselves exposed. So who would have nothing to lose by all this blowing up publicly and the feds getting involved? I'm thinking somebody in the criminal underground because they would never go to Diddy's parties. They don't need to. You know, and I don't know that Diddy would have ever let them in, you know, because appearances, you know, being part of the in group, the special group. But if he is in trouble with somebody in the criminal underground, and that's what started this whole federal blow up of his life, I'm gonna make you a good guess that they're waiting for him in prison too, and it's not gonna be pretty, and he knows that, and that's why he is absolutely abjectly terrified, pissing his pants, crying like a baby, trying to stay or get out of jail until trial. So I could be wrong. We'll see. We'll see. Okay, so for those who are interested in rectification and getting into a deeper dive of the chart, that's in the next video, and we'll see you guys.